Welcome to EnglishPass Podcast, brought to you from our local studio in Calgary. I'm your host, Samantha, and today we're diving into an exciting topic: looking for ideas. Whether you're a beginner or intermediate learner, in this podcast, we're helping you level up your English listening and reading skills. And before we get started, let me tell you that the sponsor of this episode is TypeFit, keyboard typing practice and learning service. Today, we're exploring something really interesting: looking for ideas. This is an amazing subject for English learners because it covers a lot of practical vocabulary and real-world situations. So let's dive right in. Looking for ideas is the active and intentional process of searching for inspiration, solutions, or creative sparks to solve a problem or build something entirely new. It is the very first step in the creative cycle, often referred to by experts as ideation. Many people suffer from the common misconception that a great idea is something that simply happens to you, like a lightning bolt striking out of a clear blue sky. While it can certainly feel that way when a thought suddenly arrives, most productive people understand that looking for ideas is actually a practice. It is a skill that can be developed over time through observation, curiosity, and specific techniques. It is not just about waiting for the right moment. It is about creating an environment where ideas are likely to show up. To begin this journey, we must understand the core concept of inspiration. Inspiration is defined as the process of being mentally stimulated to do or feel something, especially to do something creative. For many, this begins with the simple act of looking at the world with fresh eyes. Consider the famous story of George de Mestral, a Swiss engineer. One day, after returning from a walk in the woods with his dog, he noticed that his trousers and the dog's fur were covered in small, prickly plant burrs. Instead of just being annoyed, he looked at the burrs under a microscope. He discovered they had tiny hooks that allowed them to grab onto loops of fabric. This simple observation, driven by curiosity, led to the invention of Velcro. This real-world example shows that looking for ideas often starts with noticing the small things that everyone else ignores. Another essential term in the creative process is incubation. Incubation is the stage where you stop focusing on a problem and let your subconscious mind take over. We have all experienced this. You struggle with a math problem or a writing assignment for hours with no success, only to have the answer pop into your brain while you are washing dishes or taking a shower. This happens because the brain needs time to rearrange information without the pressure of conscious thought. Historically, people did not understand the biology of the brain, so they looked for external explanations. The ancient Greeks, for instance, believed in the Muses, which were 9 goddesses responsible for different types of art and science. If a poet had a great idea, they believed a muse had whispered it into their ear. Today, we know it is the result of our neural pathways making new connections, but the feeling of sudden discovery remains a powerful human experience. A common struggle when looking for ideas is the creative block, which is the temporary inability to produce new work or find a spark. One effective way to break through this block is through synthesis. Synthesis is the act of combining 2 or more existing ideas to create something entirely new. We often think that originality means creating something from nothing, but almost all human progress is built on what came before. For example, look at the development of the personal computer. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak did not invent the television screen, the typewriter keyboard, or the microchip. Instead, they looked at these separate technologies and synthesized them into a single machine that a regular person could use at home. When you are looking for ideas, you do not always need to find a brand new planet. Sometimes you just need to look at two known objects and ask what happens if you glue them together. Constraints, or limitations, are another surprising and powerful tool for generating ideas. It sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? We usually think that to be creative, we need total freedom. However, psychology shows that when we have too many choices, our brains often become overwhelmed and shut down. By setting strict rules, we force our minds to find creative paths around obstacles. A famous example is the writing of the book Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss. His editor made a bet that he could not write a book using only 50 different words. Dr. Seuss accepted the challenge and produced a masterpiece that remains popular decades later. This teaches us that if you are looking for an idea, you might try limiting your resources. If you are a photographer, try taking photos using only one specific color. If you are a student, try explaining a complex topic using only simple, one-syllable words. These constraints act as a catalyst for innovation. Then there is the formal practice of brainstorming. Brainstorming is a group or individual technique for generating a large number of ideas for the solution to a specific problem. The key to successful brainstorming is the total separation of generation and judgment. When you are in the looking phase, you must turn off your inner critic. Every idea, no matter how silly or impossible it seems, should be written down. This is called divergent thinking. Companies like Pixar use a version of this in their brain trust meetings. The directors and writers gather to watch early versions of their movies and look for what is missing. They don't just complain, they look for ideas to fix the story. This leads to a process where they iterate on the project. To iterate means to perform a process repeatedly, making small improvements each time. A Pixar movie might go through dozens of versions before it reaches the theater. The perfect idea was never there at the start. It was found through constant looking and changing. Let's consider the role of the environment and movement. Sometimes, looking for ideas requires a change in physical space. When we stay in the same room all day, our brains get used to the surroundings and stop being alert. Movement, especially walking, has been linked to increased creative output. Researchers at Stanford University found that walking increases creative inspiration by an average of 60%. This is why many successful people, like the late Steve Jobs, preferred walking meetings. The act of walking engages the body just enough to allow the mind to wander. Similarly, J.K. Rowling famously conceived the idea for the Harry Potter series while she was on a train that was delayed for 4 hours. She did not have a pen with her at the time, so she was forced to look inward and develop the characters in her head. This is a classic example of serendipity. Serendipity is the occurrence of finding something valuable or pleasant when you are not specifically looking for it. However, you have to be in a state of mind where you can recognize the happy accident when it happens. We must also look at how stealing plays a role in finding ideas. In the book Steal Like an Artist, author Austin Kleon explains that nothing is completely original. Every artist is a collector of ideas. They look at what they love and take bits and pieces from many different sources to build their own style. George Lucas did this when he created Star Wars. He was a huge fan of old Japanese samurai films and classic Western movies about cowboys. He took those archetypes and characters and put them in a science fiction setting. By looking at these diverse influences and merging them with his own vision, he created a cultural phenomenon. This isn't about copying one person's work. It is about being influenced by dozens of sources until your own unique voice emerges. Curiosity is perhaps the most important trait for anyone looking for ideas. This often involves asking, "What if?" questions that challenge our assumptions about how the world works. The founders of Airbnb asked, "What if you could rent out a spare room in your house to a stranger?" At the time, that sounded like a strange and even dangerous idea to many people. But by pursuing that, "what if?" they changed the entire travel industry. A concept is an abstract idea or a general notion, and the concept of the sharing economy grew out of people looking for ideas on how to use resources more efficiently. They didn't start with a giant, perfect business plan. They started by looking for a small idea to solve a temporary problem they had with paying their own rent. Misconceptions often hold people back from even starting the search. Many believe that you are either born creative or you are not. This is simply not true. Looking for ideas is like training a muscle in the gym. The more you do it, the easier it becomes for your brain to spot opportunities. Another misconception is that you need a lot of money or high-tech tools to find great ideas. In reality, some of the best ideas in history were scribbled on napkins or discussed over a simple cup of coffee. The implementation of an idea, which means putting the idea into action, is often the hardest part. But the looking phase is where the heart of the project is born. To be truly successful in looking for ideas, you should also develop a system for capturing them. Many people have a great idea while they are driving or walking, but they think to themselves, "I will remember that later." Most of the time, they don't. The brain is excellent at creating ideas, but poor at storing them long-term. Keeping a small notebook, using a digital app, or recording quick voice memos are essential habits for a creative person. By documenting your thoughts, you create a bank of ideas that you can return to later. Even if an idea seems useless today, it might be the missing piece of a puzzle you try to solve next year. In summary, looking for ideas is an active, ongoing engagement with life. It involves being observant like a scientist, curious like a child, and persistent like an athlete. Whether you are looking for a way to improve your community, start a small business, or paint a picture, the process remains the same. You look at what already exists, you ask what if, you combine different elements, and you give your mind the space and time to connect the dots. Ideas are all around us, hidden in the mundane details of our daily routines. All we have to do is train ourselves to see them. And that's all for today's episode of EnglishPass Podcast. I hope you found this helpful. Remember to practice what you've learned and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we improve. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe and join us next time. Let me remind you that the sponsor of the episode is TypeFit, and I suggest to check the link at the description. I'm Samantha, and I'm excited to be your host for many more fascinating episodes to come. Until then, keep learning and keep growing. Goodbye.